औज़ुबिल्लाहि मिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम सल्लल्लाहु अला हबीबिही सय्यदना व मौलाना मुहम्मद व आलिहि व सहाबिहि व बारिक वसल्लम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन अर्रहमानिर्रहीम मालिकि यौमिद्दीन इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन इहदिनस सिरातल मुस्तकीम सिरातल लज़ीना अनअमता अलैहिम गैरिल मग़दूबि अलैहिम वलद्दालीन आमीन सदक़ल्लाहुल अज़ीम. Thank you very much, honorable guest speakers, for joining HR Legends Forum today for participation in panel discussion on strategic digital learning initiatives for employee engagement and employee development. So we are facing a lot of challenges. We have faced a lot of challenges, and lots of new challenges are still waiting for us. So we have to prepare for that. And the industry, especially the training and development industry, has faced serious issues during the last couple of months. The trainers who were really busy all the time, they are not busy that much. The organizations who were always busy, who were not able to spare employees for their personal developments, are now encouraging employees for their professional development. They are routing them towards digital learnings, but we have to see that these digital learnings, how much are they successful? What is the future of trainers in every country in the world? How we can ensure that digital learning is helping organization in meeting their organizational objectives and the professional objectives and the personal and individual objectives of employees. And also, is it really fruitful, useful for employee engagement? So for this particular purpose, we have this whole panel, and we have Syed Farhan from uh, Islamabad joining us today. He will be giving his introduction soon. He will be moderating this session. Then we have Sabine from Austria. She has joined us all the way from Austria. We have 4 hours difference with her. Then we have Mr. Ahmed Hanger. He has joined us from Turkey. He's representing an Okta over here. Then we have Mr. Kamran Rizvi on the number 5. He is a global trainer and management guru and most famous person in Pakistan, you can say. Then we have Mr. Anas. He has joined us from a local organization of Pakistan. He will be briefly introducing him as well. And then we have Mr. Mashkoor. I think he's facing little technical
Mashkoor is
issues.
in. You just have to get him in.
Okay, okay. Just let me check. So now with this, I hand over the further proceeding to Mr. Syed Farhan so that he can continue with the session and ask the honorable panel members to give their own introduction in their own unique style. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Ghulam Mustafa, and welcome all the panelists to today's session on strategic digital learning and employee engagement and development. As Ghulam Abbas said, that the challenge what we all are facing today is that just converting your conventional training and using a collaboration and communication tool, does it fulfill all the requirements and the learning outcomes which people expects? Are we doing justice to make it really happen, or something more needs to be done? Then the other perspective is this disruption has completely given us a U-turn to think in a different perspective. A lot of organizations started working from home, and they are still doing. Would it be the same productivity and the engagement continues the way it is? When we come to the learning perspective, a lot of organizations started saying, okay, let's convert to digital learning, not understanding what is the adaptation or acceptance to digital norms, right? So I think from a T&D industry perspective, we all need to brainstorm what could be the best practices, what can make it really happen, what can create that level of engagement and that learning outcome which used to happen in the previous physical instructor-led training models, and how those things can be overcome. So with this, I would like to go to all the panelists. We'll go for a one round of everyone's introduction, because every panelist has a rich experience, so they should introduce themselves and then give a brief perspective about this thing. I'm very passionate about it because being an HR professional for over 25 years in Pakistan and in UAE, I'd been contemplating digital learning for many years. And when I came back after a decade from UAE, 2016, and I've been preaching and practicing digital learning solutions. We also represent my entity called Beyond Paradigm. And I remember those days when Kamran Rizvi used to train us, and there was a thing called paradigm shift. So I established an entity called Beyond Paradigm, and we represent multiple global vendors of digital learning. We represent Skillsoft in Pakistan, we represent KPI Institute, we represent Ardor Learning. So there are multiple tools which we are facilitating, but it is not about the tool. It is the blend, and it is the knowledge to blend it the way the organization wants. So at least at my business model, we see that there is a lot of queries and inquiries and usage trend going up. But again, the challenge remains: how adopted are we? What are the acceptance, and what is the learning outcome we'll do along with all those things? So I think with this, I'll move to Sabine, and one by one to everyone, introduce yourself, give a brief perspective about the topic of the day, and then we move on. Thank you. Sabine, your mic.
You're mute.
Yes.
Thank you, Farhan. Thank you very much. Hello to everyone. Have a beautiful evening or morning, wherever you are listening. My name is Sabine Chalishka, and I'm the CEO of People at Right Place. And this is I'm an organizational developer. I do also some keynote speeches, and I am actually a consultant for organizational transformation. I have also some expertises in unconscious bias, and I'm an expert in leadership development. I would call my key areas are behavioral design and learning from failure to develop a learning culture, and leadership in the future. And that fits to our topic of today. Maybe what also might be interesting, that my organization was awarded this year, although it was a difficult year for all of us, among the top 10 companies in the top European leadership development category. And this is a great honor. And yeah, although it's difficult, we will move on, and we will transform the learning approaches also in the digital age. Thank you. And I move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Sabine. I think Kamran Z, please proceed.
Thank you. It's a real honor for me to be part of this august group, and the subject matter is very close to our hearts. I can't say just mine. My background is very brief. I started my career in international banking back in 1976. I worked there for 14 years, and this institution was in 72 countries. There were 98 nationalities. So I got a lot of cross-cultural exposure. Then when I came to Pakistan in 91, I got into the field of learning and development. So for almost 30 years, I've been working with the corporate sector, the non-profits, as well as government and as academia, etc. So my core is very similar to Sabine, and I'm very interested to learning from her in the future as well. Leadership is the lens with which I look at events. And when we relate to COVID-19, the pandemic, and the shift that has suddenly taken place across the globe, what I find is that, life and living is not an option. And likewise, learning is also not an option. And it reminds me of Morgan McCall's model of 70-20-10. And traditional classroom learning has always been about 5 to 10% of the personal and professional development menu. I feel that networking, reading books, on-the-job experience, coaching are largely the key which make a significant impact in anyone's development and improvement. So when we talk of the times we are in now, so one needs to, from a strategic perspective, look at what are the assumptions we're going by. I recall that when March, April, and May was a period, companies were in a wait and see mode. Now, wait and see is not necessarily a time when you're making decisions. You're actually just freezing everything and saying, we'll wait, tide it out. I feel that the realization has come that this will continue. This crisis is not over. There will be waves after waves, and today it's a health crisis. Tomorrow it could be a social crisis, and then it could turn into an economic crisis of a bigger order, and then political crisis. And as a case study, I think Lebanon is very much for us to keep in mind. That very tragic event, just recent event, which everyone knows about. Now, how would people be thinking in terms of learning and development in that context? So the world is really at a threshold where we can become better human beings. And I feel like eating, living, learning is also a lifelong endeavor. Yes, the form and mode may change. And I feel like conventional trainers like myself, who was mostly on ground, traveling, hotels, etc., now is the time when we have to be agile and resilient. And agility demands that what we have been preaching for so long. I mean, have you heard the word VUCA in the last 2 months? No, ever since COVID came in, VUCA, which it is not being mentioned: volatile, uncertain, chaotic, complex, and ambiguous. So I feel that we are poised for a very different form of learning. Learning is not going away. It will remain. And as practitioners, as professionals in this arena, we just have to be very cognitive of one thing, which is effectiveness. No matter what medium, I mean, to me, digital is a medium. Our goal must be effectiveness. Does what we do make a difference? Now, whether we come through digital means or on ground in a very SOP-driven environment, effectiveness is always going to be the key, and return on investment will be another key. But organizations certainly want, and from my own experience, they want people to be trained, they want them to be focused. But for that, we have to find ways of ensuring that the content is effective, post-training evaluation, 3 months down the road, is yielding the results that they're looking for. So I'm sure that the future is bright, but it's very different. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamran sir. I think very well summarized. In the digital learning, we say self-paced learning, because the challenge is that the conventional perspective of a functional person learns only his skill or her skill is over. So lifelong learning with diversified kind of things is a need of the day. With that, I would like Mr. Mashkoor to come over and express your intro. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Farhan. My name is Mashkoor Malik, and I'm at the moment I'm working with Volca Food International, and I'm the head of HR here. My core experience throughout is in HR, and I used to be abroad for some time for my higher studies, MS from Glasgow, Caledonia University, UK. I did my research on employee engagement. That's another my area of interest, employee engagement on BBC UK. So I have around 16 years of HR, core HR experience. So being with local international companies like Coca-Cola and O2. I worked for O2 for some time, and PEL, and currently I'm with Volca Food, and we are the largest food manufacturer under one umbrella in Pakistan, and we are going to be largest in Asia in next 3 years, inshallah. And the vision is very clear, and we are very clear on our objectives, inshallah. So as far as today's topic is concerned about learning and development and employee engagement, if we look at the definition of learning, it is actually an act of acquiring or modifying existing knowledge. So when we talk about the modifying existing knowledge means, the world has totally changed especially after COVID. The rebirth has taken place in learning, right? So everything has gone digital, online. People using Zoom and other medias, like we are using OneStream, StreamYard here. So from conventional to the the modern, like digital learning has actually taken place here. So accordingly, the trainers or the practitioners, learning practitioners, they will have to train themselves. They have to modify their knowledge and skills, so that they can provide better services to the customers, or wherever they are sitting across the globe. So we will, of course, discuss in detail the topic and questions. And so I leave you here with my introduction, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Good brief introduction, and yes, we'll go for detailed questions later. Can I request Mr. Ahmed to give an intro, a brief perspective of today's session?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much. I'm honored to be part of this distinguished panelists. I'm from Turkey. Before pandemic, before this virus thing, we were talking about, as you mentioned, as discussed, we were talking about VUCA and digital transformation. But with the virus, things suddenly digitally transformed. But also the uncertainty increased, and the development and continuous development became the must for the organization's agility. As a company in the e-learning field, we're providing technology and the content. For many years, we believe that learning has to be a kind of a journey. So this is the time to make learning a journey with the digital resources, with the digital platforms, of course, and hopefully in the near future, with the face-to-face training, plus on-the-job training. But everything has to be in a process design. Like in the digital era, we're talking about customer experience design. As trainers, we have to talk about the learner experience. How should we design the learning so that the learning will be delivered to the learner when it is needed? It will be delivered to the learner when he or she is performing something. These are the times, it is the case also in Turkey, in Turkish economy, they have to be very, very clever using our resources because they are limited. Time is limited. You have to get good business results. You have to have value-added services and products. And this can only be done through learning. And digitalization will definitely, if we design it correctly, benefit to self-improvement, benefit to continuous learning, and of course, benefit to the business result, which is a must for the economies and for the companies, for the government institutions, to be more competitive in this world. Otherwise, the problems, the economical problems will never end. Nowadays, we are experiencing hard time in the economy, and digital learning is kind of a tool to rescue us from here. So I'd like to briefly explain about this point, and I will stop, and later on, I will be answering your questions in detail. Okay, Mr. Farhan?
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I think the last panelist, Mr. Anas, we would like you to give a brief perspective for today's session, and then we'll go for the second round of detailed question and answers.
Thank you, Farhan. It's an honor and pleasure to be here as part of this distinguished panel, and I feel like I'm going to learn the most out of this panel because there's so many such rich experience over here sitting in front of me. A quick introduction about myself is that I'm currently working with a tech company, one of the top tech companies of Pakistan, which is called Venture Dive. I was just thinking about my introduction, and I couldn't stop thinking about the irony that in 2019, Venture Dive won the Best Place to Work award and the Most Fun Place to Work award, and now we're sitting here, we don't have a place to work. It's funny how things can change so rapidly. But about my experience, I've been associated with different sorts of companies spanning across different industries for over 16 years. Most of my experience has been in associated with HR, and the first few years I've sort of changed roles, but I spent a considerable amount of time in learning and development and organizational development and organizational effectiveness. So this topic is naturally very close to my heart, and I would love to hear what the other panelists have to say about this. Overall, if you ask me my thoughts about the topic, I feel that the world has, I mean, this push towards digital learning was coming. We could all see it coming, right? But COVID has sort of been the catalyst that has sped up the journey and sort of pushed us towards it. And yes, as rightly said earlier, that in some cases we weren't really ready for it, and we adapted to the new ways of learning, working. Companies have moved to remote working. Trainers have moved to doing virtual webinars. However, now is the part where reflection comes in. We see, is it working? Is it not working? And what do we need to change in order to make it work? And that's the and this is the right time to have this conversation. So I think this is a great initiative on having that conversation. I think, as Kamran Saab said, that the 70-20-10 rule, the traditional classroom learning has always been 10% of the entire learning journey. However, if you look at both perspectives, from the trainer's point of view, that 10% was their bread and butter, and from the if you look at from the organization's point of view, that 10% played a very key role in uplifting and upskilling the organization. And we have to make sure, how do we cover up for that? However, I do feel that at this point in time, most that burden that we always thought that the burden of learning and upskilling was eventually falls on the individual themselves. I think that theory is being put to the test, and we will only see people who are obsessed with self-learning. They will rise, and this era is going to give rise to them. Obviously, there are things that trainers and in our industry we can do in terms of improvement, but I think the ultimate responsibility will fall on the individual, and let's see how they come out with.
Thank you, Anas, and thank you all the panelists. We had a good round of brainstorming on this concept. I think moving forward, one of the challenge which we have seen from the conventional training, the concept used to start from doing a TNA. So the data was collected based on certain performance issues and all that. So it was a historical perspective, and based on that, the L&D teams, the trainers, used to develop calendars and move forward. Now with this digital age, we see it is more of a social learning. So we are bringing learning to the learners. We are bringing the learning in their hand. When we started, Ghulam Mustafa was saying that sometimes we see an overflow of information because everyone is doing webinars, and how to gauge that webinar is good enough or not. Similarly, within Pakistan, we have recently observed that a lot of physical trainers, the instructor-led training modules were converted on Zoom or certain these communication tool, not even blending that the presentation could be readable to all that. So how people would guide the trainer or the training industry, what are the basic or the most important steps to be immediately adopted to make their trainings fruitful? They can drive the learning outcome. And the most important thing is, can the virtual sessions being done for same 8 hours the whole day, or we need to come up with something smarter, because we are also observing that some sessions are going for 8 to 10 hours. Can people really sit back and concentrate on that? What are your views? Because we have to all brainstorm and come up with smarter ideas to make a good reality for the future. So I'll open up the floor, whoever would like to answer first, and then we'll have everyone's perspective before we move to next question.
Fastest finger first.
Sure.
Well, I just thought, why not? For Ghulam Mustafa, could you leave us 4 on the screen? I would rather have that, because I don't want to speak to myself. Yeah, this is better. This way I feel like I'm in a conversation. My feeling is very simple, which is that the digital format, whether we go for learning management systems, e-learning, webinars, coaching, the duration has to be much less than the conventional for a start. So it has to be very modular and it must not exceed 2 hours. And this is something that I have been reading up on, practicing. Must be very engaging, interactive, and that is crucial because more than 15 minutes of talk time is too much of a strain. And you're absolutely right, Farhan, when you say that there's an abundance of opportunity for people to learn. I signed up on a Harvard program called Rhetoric, Persuasive Writing and Public Speaking. 250,000 people had registered on that e-learning free program, and 250,000. So I was surprised as to how, and then when I went through the content, I was stuck. I mean, I said I could have done it myself because the material was good, but then there are so many great articles out there. There's so many videos on YouTube out there. So why should I go through the trouble of being steered and guided and doing those MCQs? And I found that people on the e-learning platform tend to be slightly discouraged because there is no escape. And if you're doing your MCQs, it's all analytics. And the analytics are known to the company. And the company gets to realize how well you're performing on a course and not performing on a course. So there is one downside where people feel rather threatened, policed, because they feel that if they don't attend, if they do performance MCQs, etc., after watching a video, or for that matter, reading a text, that they're under pressure. So I felt that that was a dissuasion, in terms of a strategic process. Classroom learning was slightly different. Participants had the opportunity to ask questions. So my feeling is blended learning is perhaps the key thing that we need to keep in mind, that it works really well when you combine classroom with videos, with other avenues. And of course, where coaching is concerned, I find that one-on-one coaching on digital platforms is far more effective than face-to-face, because every format that you take, every media that you use has its pros and cons. The classroom had its pros and cons, and so does digital. But coaching is one thing I found is far, far, far more effective, particularly when you're doing one-to-one or one to a small group of 5 or 6. It really works brilliantly. It's short, it's sharp, it's focused, and people actually get something out of it. So my recent experiences have given me this particular horizon, and I would urge strategically for organizations to now start shifting towards coaching as a method. Because webinars is great for awareness creation, sure. But when it comes to real learning and feedback and role plays, I mean, Zoom, for instance, has breakout rooms. And when you go into a breakout room and you are in a small group and you're doing exercises and role plays, all of those are very possible on the digital platform. And we find that you can record it, you can give feedback, so much is done. And I would conclude by saying one thing, that ever since we've gone digital, market has gone from local Pakistan to international, global. Right now, for example, Sabine and I, we are here. I mean, she's in Austria. I'm sitting here. My friend is from Turkey. I mean, digital just kills the borders. I don't need visa. I don't need to have to book a flight, stay in a hotel. All of that waste has actually gone. Time was being wasted. Resources were being wasted. Climate was being affected. We can talk. I mean, I have seen people cry in sessions. I mean, if that's not emotional engagement, what is? On a digital platform. So I have seen that happen, particularly in the coaching sessions that I've done. So my request is that we think in terms of long term. This is not going away. This is a 3 to 5 year horizon. We need to plan for that. And of course, when we do have normalized, and I hope we never do, when my friend Ahmed said that, competitiveness, it is, in my view, the competitiveness that has ruined us. We have been having a war with nature just to make profits and increase shareholder values. The reason the world is in a crisis right now is because of inequity. And I honestly feel that the corporate world has been extremely responsible in its desire to be number one and leading edge and efficient. All the innovation has actually caused a lot of environmental damage. It has affected our sustainability. I mean, I was so pleased to talk to someone who is doing his PhD in China, who said to me that he is working on green creativity. I was delighted by that. Green, and I asked him to explain. He said, anything we do, any idea that comes, it has to pass the test of sustainability. And if it passes the test of sustainability, everyone wins. We live in a world where 2,500 people control the wealth which 4.5 billion people have. I mean, what system can produce so much of inequity and injustice, social injustice that we are witnessing today? So I feel as trainers, we are responsible not only to facilitate organizations strategically in people becoming effective, efficient, and productive, but at the same time, I feel business has to change its paradigm also. So greatness is not in the profitability, it is in the contribution and trying to become more responsible, ecologically friendly, and harmonious with the overall game plan. So the long-term thinking has to come in at some point. So these are some thoughts I was dying to say. Thank you, Farhan.
Thank you, Kamran. I think let's take Sabine's perspective.
Yeah, difficult. Difficult to speak after Kamran. No, actually, there's nothing to add. You speak from my heart. Maybe I can add from my experience how we're doing it. We had offices in Turkey, Austria, Berlin, Brussels. Now we have a lot of home offices in all those countries. And so we worked internationally before, but I see very similar then to Kamran. I see we saw it even before, but the organizations were not ready to change the learning, training formats, development formats. And I always said we need to break it down to smaller parts, because what I have seen in these 15 years of my career in this business is that participants, they enjoy being 2 days, 3 days in a workshop. You get standing ovation, you get the good notes that it was the best workshop. They are engaged, they are happy. They come back to the workplace, their emails are full, the box is full, they have so much to do, they are overburdened, they are tired. And after 2 days, everything is gone. Everything is gone. It's just a waste of money. And I tried to convince the last years already all my clients to make it in small portions, and to ask first, what is the goal you want to see different, and then demand it from the participants. It's not about sending somebody as a incentive to such programs. It's about what is the new you want to see, and let's design it according to it, because then it only has an impact, then it only has a meaning. And when I was thinking to my very first leadership position, it was at Alcatel. It's already 20 years ago. I was responsible for sales and marketing, and so selling more mobile phone devices. And 2 years later, I started parallel my own first company. So I was quite young, and of course in the alignment with my employer. And it was a training company, but believe it or not, it was training people how to use their mobile phones. And this was in 1999, 2000 around. And because people have been afraid of this new technology. People don't change. It's today the same. People are still afraid of new technologies. So what I observed is that those who really wanted and those who have been sent by their sons and daughters, there was no engagement to learn. So what is key for me, on top to all what Kamran said, and what I have experienced in all those workshops and concepts, if there is no what's in it for me for the participant, why should he sit on the screen for watching? If it's the best webinar ever, or if it's a coaching session, as you mentioned before, of course, I believe the same, and my concept is built on the same pillars. But if the person is sent and does not see the meaning in it and doesn't really want it, waste of money. Waste of time. It's gone. So what I would like to underline, additional to what is already said, is that when the people don't want, look first what's in it for them, and then they will take the time, they will find it in their speed. And what is also important for me when we talk about training and development, what do we want to develop? Do we want to develop their deficits, their weaknesses, or their strengths? So what is also important for me is that, and there we have to also go back to science, because when you focus on developing your strength, then you will grow faster. And instead of trying to improve your weaknesses. So as I remember right, it may require 8,000 to 10,000 hours to practice to really rewire your brain and turn a weakness into a strength. So this is really waste of time. And when you adapt it to this new technology and to this new learning approach where you can put it in pieces, there could be a book you read in advance, there could be a video you look in advance, and the people can do it accordingly to their rhythm, to their time, to their energy level when it's suitable for them, and then reflect with a coach or with a facilitator on the learned. And what does it mean for my life, and how can I transform it to my business, to the goals, to that what is really what matters. Yeah, I should stop. So my message is: do not waste time on sitting for hours when there is no meaning in for the people, and don't force them to learn something when there is no direct benefit for them. Don't send people to a training when they have never a chance to apply it.
Thank you, Sabine. I think very well said. Yes, you are 100% right that previously, I would say the conventional training, there was no absolute measure what is good and what is bad, what brings the real learning outcomes. It was an indirect effect which could have been seen in successful organizations which used to spend reasonable training funds and regular trainings. But I think I would vote that with a blended approach, with a digital approach, I think there will be a little better measurements to gauge the learning outcome. As Mr. Kamran said, yes, it may be disliked by people because they do not like to be assessed there and then. So there will be certain challenges, certain outcomes. We all need to see what would be the new adaptations by the trainers, as well as all those participants which would miss their training tours, relaxation at 5-star hotels, scenic tours and all that. I think in our country also, a lot of people had budgeted, oh, these many days of my traveling gonna give me this much traveling allowance. So I think there are challenges, but then organizations, if couple up that traveling time, that traveling allowances, that hotel expenses, and bring them all together to one newer perspective, I think they reasonably had reasonable funds to make the change happen easily. I would request Mr. Ahmed, his perspective now from Turkey. What are the Turkish doing these days?
First of all, I'd like to thank to Mr. Kamran and thanks for giving me a chance to correct myself. Let me start with this. You're definitely right. We have to be ecologically friendly, and the nature is the limited resource. If there's no nature, there's no life. In fact, nowadays in Turkey, we're discussing more and more about reducing the carbon footprint. Of course, before the virus, let me tell you this. During the virus, it's only virus. But we have been discussing about reducing the carbon footprints of the individuals, of the companies, and of the society, government. And isn't digital learning is a way to help to reduce the carbon footprint. Of course, we all love, in Turkey also, we love traveling. We love face-to-face training. It's a kind of also motivational activity. It's a kind of a holiday as well, 5-star hotel, relaxing. But it's also costing a lot to the nature. We're not minimizing, we're not kind of excluding the classroom training or face-to-face training. Nowadays, it's almost stopped. And most probably till the end of this year, there will be very limited number of face-to-face trainings. So everything has to be digital. But is digital learning doing a webinar only? And nowadays we're discussing about, yes, it's a very good way to deliver the information where it is needed and when it is needed, effectively and or fast. But the learning is, especially in the business, should help a person to improve himself, to realize his or her potential, and to actually do something good for himself, for the company, for the society. So the webinar is not enough for all this story. So we're now discussing more and more about hybrid training or blended learning. We have been discussing about blended learning for the last 20 years, but I think because of this all challenges we're facing because of the virus, now learning is becoming more blended. For the corporate academies, using their money is getting more and more critical. I don't know the case in the world right now, but in Turkey, the L&D budgets are almost 30%, 40% cut. And this means with the resources limited, you have to be more creative and the training should be more effective. So digital learning is not only helping to kind of reduce the carbon footprint, but also use the budgets effectively. So let's have some video, pre-classroom training or pre-webinar, do some reading, do some homework. Yes, like universities, in the companies, you have to do some homework because learning is your personal responsibility. Get ready for the classroom or for the webinar and do something very different and unusual in the webinar. Discuss, make learning social. Then after the webinar, as Sabine mentioned, people are forgetting. According to Ebn Kaos, forgetting cure, people are forgetting. So let's do something digitally to make people remember and kind of use the information for the performance which is needed in the business. I'm definitely a firm believer for our responsibility about the nature. So when I say competitiveness, it's not only competitiveness and making more money, making more profitable, but also competitiveness for recycling our societies. So our societies in Turkey, in the Middle East, in Pakistan, we have to upskill our nation. In the next 15 years, 20 years, we need to have millions of people reskilled. And without digital learning, how can this be done? We don't have enough resources. We don't have time. So in that respect, digital learning can help at least our competitiveness for intellectual property as well. We're talking about digital transformation. We're talking about the business plans. We're talking about virus. We need people. So we need to upscale the people's, let's say, skills. And digital learning is a kind of way of doing this. In November, beginning with September, the schools will be opened. Still, it is discussed whether it's going to be open or not. But I can tell you that during this year, during the last 6 months, our Ministry of Education did a lot about distance education, and most of the professionals, they see their kids learning from a distance, and that really affected our digital learning initiatives in the companies as well. So this virus also forced students to learn at home, and this kind of influenced the professionals. Okay, I have to invest myself. I have to learn from a distance as well. So these are kind of the brief picture from Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I would add here, very recently we've been facilitating one of the organization towards virtual and digital learning. as you well said, so we are doing a webinar after every 15 days. So the last time when we did the webinar, right, and we had like this chat and discussion, so there were certain specific topics they wanted to learn. What we did after that, we provided them a digital learning solution, and we send them the IDs that you cover up, and we'll catch you up in 2 weeks time. So then when we conducted the session yesterday, I said what happened, because I was seeing on the digital side from the LMS what they're using. None literally logged in once. So yesterday's session, when I logged in, I just opened up the, we did a webinar. I shared my screen. I said, this was the login. Let's take the first which you asked. This is the course. It's like 20 minutes. This is the video. It's 15 minutes. So it was just the concept of taking the fear out of them and saying the content is there. It is a self-paced approach you could have learned. And people were so excited. Oh, you gave us all this. I said, you have been giving it for about 2 weeks. It's been lying with you. You did not bother, right? And they were excited. Okay, we can learn. So it's not all the time that you have to talk. So a lot of learning, as we used to do, reading books, right? So we can go into a virtual space, and in a virtual space, it's not only reading. Good learning tools do have a voiceover as well. So I do value what Ahmed is saying, that it has to be a blend of digital, virtual, and a blend together makes something happen. So with this, I would move Mr. Mashkoor, your perspective.
Yes, thank you very much. I think nothing is left after, Mr. Kamran and Ahmed and Sabine. But again, I would like to, give my point of view here. First of all, being practitioners, I think we need to accept, we need to be, we need to convince ourselves, or we need to be convinced that, things have changed. Things have changed, right? And especially this COVID has pushed, things, digitally and, online. Whether these are there are trainings or any meetings or any webinar or whatever we call it, so the things have gone digitally. But again, if we see before even COVID, we see the world has changed so rapidly, and you see every moment some advancement and innovation is happening around the world. These changes or these innovations are taking place from a new vision, of course, and accordingly we have to have a new learning vision, of course, to tackle these challenges, because companies are going global, right? So they have like multi-generational workforce, international customers, and even they have more qualified people or customers and flexible part-time working. If we talk about recently, I was reading a survey from CIPD. As I said, being practitioner, we have to accept first. The things have changed. So if we talk about digital, things, 90% people, they believe things, have changed and they have gone digital, but only 30% out of those, they believe they can deliver it. So practitioners will have to, as I earlier said in the start, learning is all about like acquiring a new skill or modifying your existing information or knowledge. So we will have to, modify our knowledge. We will have to modify our, skills, to use these technologies, and we need to be digitized ourselves first. I will second, the Sabine and Ahmed, the point of view. Companies always have, some issues on budgets, training budgets, and being HR and being practitioners, we always struggle in that to convince management on training budgets. So I think this is the time. This is the time, and we can have better solutions with less budgets. I was recently, reading a concept that is informalization. That is actually, that was a concept from one of the US philosopher, and he said doing more and more with less and less. Even you reach a point where you do everything with nothing, right? So, so this actually digitization, or this technology has brought us to the point. I mean, we can do much more with less budgets, with less expenses, with less time, and as very well said by Samin, people used to travel from one place to other, and they are consuming their time, and those time and that time can be used for I mean, for their training or for their learning, and people can have more the more stuff to learn, more time to learn, instead of traveling and wasting their time. So again, at that time, it was thought like this is just a philosophical statement, but today we can see that philosopher was right, and what he said, do more and more with less and less, and this technology can help us in this. But again, if we can make a good blend of it, if where possible, we can go for physical, or the other ways of training, and if possible, we can go through this technology, or online, or webinar, or having people online. Again, that is good. Or we can take advantage of technology on it. So I think the first thing, we have to change ourselves. We have to accept the things have changed, and we have to change ourselves first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mashkoor. I think very well said. Being humans, I would say we are by nature a social animal. So I think it is not about social distancing, it is more about a physical distancing. But interaction at one point in time would always be there. There would always be a value to interact in a physical space, into an open space, into a healthier environment. I'm sure that the future would be a combination of virtual and being physical. We cannot just say it would be completely digital, but at least till the time we are able to come back to that reality, let's utilize the best of our time. Mr. Anas, your perspective, sir?
Thank you, Farhan. I think my fellow panelists have covered most of the areas, at least at a macro level, and I'd like to focus a little bit on the micro level of what each of us can do in order to improve and have better effectiveness. I think, as Mashkoor Saab said, that the world has changed. Let's hope that when we talk about going back to the normal, I hope that it's not going back to the same ways that we were operating in this world, and it's a new way. It may not be same as today, and it may not be the same as it was before COVID. But I generally like to compartmentalize things. So basically, we're talking about three entities, right? One is the trainers and the training institutes and the facilitators and the practitioners. The other is the corporate entity, and then you're talking about the employees or actual learners, right? What can each one of them do? So if you talk about the trainers, at least in my point of view, one thing that has changed is they have global access now. That global access also means there is a global competitiveness. So Pakistani market is now open to everyone around the world at a much more cost-effective rate because it's digital. Similarly, the whole world is open to the Pakistani market. So that's I think that's a great thing to happen, and we need to take advantage of that situation. How do we take that advantage? Is that we have to obviously work on first of all, on the content and the tools that are available. There are hundreds and thousands of tools that are available. Some we are not even aware of. For example, I'm working on a training which is about team building, and it's a virtual team building tool that sort of helps teams come together and solve different situations right in front while collaborating on the screen. So there are lots of tools available. There are whiteboards. You can collaborate online. Zoom sessions have those breakout rooms. So there are lots of things that you can do. And the other thing is content. Generally, I hope nobody takes offense, but what I've seen is in the past 15 years, our content has not been updated that much. We've been trying to, we include new things in those content, but generally the 70% of that content remains the same. And I think this is the right time. It's pushed us to update our content and make it not only according to the new generation. Let's say millennials would like to have a different sort of set of content, but to utilize the tools and make it digital friendly. The third thing is, as everybody said, that blending learning is the way to go. I don't think that you can ever replace classroom trainings, but I think one part we can think about is specialization. There are certain areas that are more suited towards blending learning approach or online digital learning, and there are certain areas or certain topics that might not suit it. So we specialize in those areas and break it down and make our content accordingly, right? Finally, I think this also allows us for longer interactions or longer engagements with our as trainers with our customers or the people that we are training. Because generally in blended learning, the longest program that I've ever attended was 6 months long. There was multiple assignments, then there was a session, then there would be assignments, then there would be a session. So I think that's the approach, because now everybody is digitally accessible. So once we build such programs where we're not only teaching them something, but as and when they face challenges in that particular situation, they reach out to us, and that's where you can even have a coaching conversation or help them simply draft an email. If somebody comes to you in communication skills, I'm having a challenge in drafting this email, can you give me some advice? That can happen, and that will build long-term relationships with not only those people, but it will actually bring the value that Sabine was talking about. Moving the conversation towards the corporates, I think, yes, budgets have always been a constraint, and that constraint is always going to be there. We have to accept it. However, that constraint is more highlighted now because, if I see from a corporate's perspective, right now the corporates are in survival mode. They're not in profit-making mode. Everybody is aiming to survive, which is why whenever you cut budgets, unfortunately, training budget gets cuts first, because they feel that they have to make sure the organization survives. It's a long debate whether this is essential for survival of the organization. Of course, we feel that we have to show the value to the organization, right? It's our responsibility. As long as we are able to show the value to the organization, I think budgets are always available. It's just a matter of showing them that this is the value that you're going to get out of it. And that's the difficult part. And as far as the employees are concerned, I do feel that this is what I said earlier, that it's time to put the theory to the test, because countless times I've seen people being sent on trainings. They get to travel, they get to eat and spend time in 5-star hotels or abroad. And this will really tell me that these people, when they're on, I'm sending them a program which is online, they don't get to travel. Are they really interested in this? And that will tell me who was in it for the food and who was in it for actually learning. So I think this is a great opportunity for not only the organization, but the trainers, because as trainers, you will get the right participants who are actually interested in listening to what you guys have to say and learning from that session, rather than people who are just there for the fun and they spend time in the training and then their actual purpose is to go out and have fun. So I think it's a great opportunity. If we are just able to adapt to this opportunity, I think this could be a game changer.
Thank you, Anas. I think you wrapped it up into 3 perspectives. Before we move, because Sabine has to go on, I'll ask Sabine one quick perspective that the future of the L&D departments towards linking, as I said, the trainings to the business objectives, or I would say the engagement. There are 2 would be bigger challenges. One, seeing the bigger picture and to link, and the other is the engagement perspective on a virtual or digital space. how do you see that can be overcome by the training or the L&D fraternity?
Thank you, Farhan. I'm sorry, unfortunately, I have to leave. I have an appointment, and due to different time zones, I couldn't make it to stay longer. Yes, it's a good question. So actually, we have to break down the organizational goals, and we have to break it down in behavior. So what does this goal mean in a certain behavior of my team member, of my organization, of the individual players? And what is also important is that was a question from Mustafa at the very beginning, that what is the future of the trainers? And he was talking about technical know-how. For me, to know how to run a Zoom meeting, to know how to use the slides, if you use slides or whatever you use, this is a hygienic factor. It's like toilet paper on the bathroom in a restaurant. So honestly, this is not a skill which should be a condition we have to talk about. But what I really think that they need the trainers in the future, or in the current, not in the future, in the current, need a different profile. So for me, it's not enough to engage the participant and make them make a great show. So it's about delivering value, and it's also not about delivering valuable content, because this content you can get everywhere online. You can find most of the content online, but you need to bring it in the right portions that you can digest it. And that's the key. So you need trainers who are more facilitators, knowing how learning works. So they need to know all the latest findings from neuroscience. They need to know what ensures sustainable learning. They need to know how our brain works. They need to know the key elements. And then, because everything else is waste of time, and as also Ansa said before, we don't have this luxury to waste this money and the time of the people. So what the future of the trainers or of this industry means, to really think and understand how learning works and how humans are built. So humans are creatures of habits. So we all six of us as well. And 95%, and you know from my last time when I talked about this unconscious bias, 95% of all our daily decisions don't even reach our consciousness. And imagine what that means. So almost 70%, or in average, I'm quite sure in some cases even more, of our daily thoughts are identical to the thoughts of yesterday. And more than 40% of our behavior is repeated every day. So what we have to know, and the competence, what is necessary, is how to overcome this creature of this usual routine, and to help people not only to get a great content, to have a great show, to learn something, to have good technique, but how to make them aware that to change a new habit. Because if we are not agile, if we are not learning constant, if we're not changing, then we will not be strong enough, as Ahmed said, Kamil said, Ansa said, and also you said before, that we will have a sustainable economy as well, because we need the strength and the power of the people, their motivation, their blooming. So what I love is that John Maxwell said it once. He said, "You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily." So for me, the secret of success is when we break it down in daily routines. So the learning and the trainers' work, the training, the development doesn't stop at the end of the training session. Doesn't matter if it's classroom or if it's online or in which format you do it. It needs to be built on a journey. So in our programs, we build a journey, and we call it Impact Roadmap. And it's included behavioral design. So it is the steps to overcome these useless habits, and to implement everyday new habits towards the organizational goal and the individual goal of this learning process and of this development journey. Yeah, I could talk forever, but I really have to leave. Sorry, but maybe my most important message, which changed my life, and what I would love that everybody understands and digests is when a flower doesn't bloom, and think of now all the employees in all the organizations, when a flower doesn't bloom, fix the environment and not the flower. And I guess this is key for
Thank
me.
you.
My
Yeah.
work, I would love that.
Very well said, Sabine. Thank you
Thank you very
for
much.
being part of this session till now. You need to leave. You can leave now. You have really contributed to this. We'll take the show forward. I think Sabine very well said. It is a combination of multiple things which needs to be adopted, and there will be certain basic hygiene factors which would be the basic norms of that. Within the digital learning space, when we say self-paced learning, the newer learning management systems, we say there is a curation of course, so you can curate what is required. Then there are intelligent modules which says if you are doing this, the next could be the other one. So definitely the conventional training where one participant used to go to this versus that would move to a self-paced learning. He would have a library of courses and things would go. However, let's take the same discussion which were more focused that how the future of trainings would be linked to organizational goals as well as in the virtual space, what would be the level of judgment or engagement of all these sessions. So there are two linked things, because we cannot just keep sitting behind the computer and not get the learning outcome, and we keep sitting behind the computer but not concentrating to learn. So what could be the techniques the trainers and the L&D fraternity needs to have to adopt in the future? Yes, Mr. Kamran, sure, you can contribute.
I think when we look at the subject matter strategically, there is a huge need for reinvention of our roles as trainers. And taking a cue from what Anas just mentioned, and also my friend Mashkoor and Ahmed, I think the new language is what's going to help us get to reinvention. And I feel, as you rightly mentioned, Farhan, you mentioned curation. And I've just shared in the chat box that I Googled leadership, and I found in 54 seconds, 0.54 seconds, 3.2 billion entries. So today we have abundance of knowledge. I mean, it's an ocean of knowledge. And don't forget, an art gallery can teach us a few things. When people go to buy art and painting, they rely on the curator to have selected pieces of work which will be of interest to them. And this is where the TNA comes in. And I have a feeling that as trainers, we need to swim in this ocean and keep finding those nuggets and provide the most suited tool or idea or concept to the need and making that match. So I think the bigger challenge is not so much for our customers. It is for our own sort of, are we choreographers, are we curators, or are we trainers? I think this is where strategically we have to reposition ourselves, and business models will have to change. It's not business as usual. It is business as unusual, which means we have to step out of our comfort zones. And everyone here knows what comfort zones can do. We just cling to them. So here comes the question. I would summarize a new language. We have to redefine our role. And I think Anas pointed out very well that we are there. We are swimming in the ocean. People want the fish. So let's find the fish they want to eat, as opposed to trying to carry on with the same old material that we had, even condensing it. It doesn't work. I think it has to be us making the bigger change in order to be relevant. Otherwise, frankly, today, any smart individual can gain all the learning he or she requires on his own by going on the internet and finding what suits him or her. That, I feel, is very much there. And unless we can facilitate and be of value addition and do the search for them and become mini Googles for our own audiences, we're in real trouble.
Yeah, I think Mr. Kamran very well said. I think that the perspective from just having the knowledge to giving the right knowledge in hand is the name of the future L&D fraternity. The viewership of any TV channel or radio channel is the viewers who watch it most of the time. Why they watch it? Because the content was there. So I think when we say the linkage to the goals and objectives and the linkage to employee engagement in the future trainings, if the training is right, if it is something for his or her choice, right, I think we'll still have better engagement and we can keep moving. Yeah, but the thoughtfulness of conventional to this getting out of this big sea, the best fish is the name of the game.
Yes.
Yes. Anyone else would like to add in?
If you allow me to add.
Yeah, Mr. Ghulam, please.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. They have spoken very well, very relevant, very informative, futuristic, strategic, full of strategies, full of policies. The one thing which I would like to add is that the training contents needs to be revised. We don't need that training material which is available on online portals, which was available, and the training material which the trainers have in their hands, or the way organizations were evaluating the training needs, the way organizations were allocating training budgets, the way organizations were making learning and development strategies, all things have changed now. The definition of learning is different as compared to February 2020. The definition of training is different as compared to February 2020. The definition of coaching is different as compared to February 2020. So we all need to understand these new definitions, new paradigms, new directions, new strategies in all these training areas, in all these learning areas, coaching areas, development areas. I was having a discussion with someone, and that person was telling me that he is acquiring a new skill. I said, why? He said that I feel like having this skill. And I said, who advised you to take this skill? He said, myself. I said, no, this is wrong. If you, how can you say that you need this skill? Because you need someone to assess you. And if you are not being assessed, or if you have not been assessed, you are just wasting your money, you are wasting your time, you are wasting your resources. So the first part of before doing any kind of development activities or acquiring, and then he said, I'm getting new learning. I said, no. Now the new definition of learning is that learning something which can help organization achieving their goals. Now, if I am learning something and I am implementing this new learning in my organization and it is not helping in achieving organizational goals, it's a waste of time. Yes, I can say I am working on my personal development, but before even going for my personal development, I need to meet my coach. I need to meet my mentor. I don't need to meet my manager. I don't need to meet XYZ. If I don't have a mentor or if I don't have a coach, it means I'm making a mistake. Because let's say, for example, if Kamran Saab is my coach, where and he is actually my coach, so I can request Kamran Saab, and he knows all the tricks, tips, and the methods and tools to assess my personality, to make my vision, and to help me put on my vision. And then I can see that I can say that I need this course, I need this development. Without that, whatever I am doing, I think I'm trying to waste my time. I need to put myself in the right direction, because the COVID situation has also made us realize that we have to use our resources efficiently, effectively. Instead of, let's say, consuming my time on a course which cannot bring a change in my personality or in my future goals, I should rather prefer to sleep for 1 hour, because sleeping will give me more energy than getting wrong information. And because that wrong information can result in wrong strategy, and wrong strategy can destroy my career, my organization, my department, and all these things. So you can just imagine. So that's why I would like to request all the listeners, watchers, viewers, participants, honorable guest speakers, honorable gurus, honorable leaders, honorable strategists, practitioners, that let's adopt to the new trends. And the new trends everybody knows. Let's revise the contents, let's revise the material, let's revise presentations, all these things. So that's it. I need to change my presentations as well. My presentations are obsolete now. I need to change my contents. If I keep on telling the same things which I was telling before 2020, I think my audience will say, Mr. Mustafa, we know this already. What new you have? Because we have like taken almost 100 webinars free of cost. What new things you have in HR? I was discussing with a friend yesterday what should be the topic of next week webinar. He was saying this. I said, we have done it, this, I have done it, this, I have done it. So what is the new topic? So what is the new VOCA? What is the new normal? Please tell us. People say, yes, there is new normal, there is next normal, but what is that? Please tell us. Yes, we need to explore. And what is the word after VOCA? VOCA is over. We have sold VOCA many times to millions of people.
We are in VUCA. We are
and now we are in VUCA. Now we are in VUCA. So
what's next?
What's next? So this is, I think, the future of training and development, and this is the strategy. Under the light of this strategy, organizations need to realign their budgets. They should focus more on development. I tell you, future is less manpower. Organizations are working on optimization of workforce, so they will need less manpower, and they are working more on third-party employment. There would be less permanent jobs. There would be very few permanent jobs. So if you, for example, if you have like people getting from third-party employer, so you need to have more stronger onboarding program, because that third party person, he needs onboarding, he needs organizational SOPs information. Maybe he's working 2 months for you and next 2 months for somebody else, and then next 2 months, so maybe he has worked in pharma and now he's in FMCG, and then he is practicing pharma rules in FMCG. So you have to unlearn him first and then make him relearn. So how can we do it with LMS, with trainers, with our strategies, with our TNA? I think this is all challenges. So to me, these are all challenges, and we have to make strategies for this. Organizations need to think. HR role is different now. There are less hirings now. We have 2 practitioners. Even I am also practicing. My organization has asked me, these positions now we don't need. I was working on them, but we don't need them. We have high third party. Most of things we have given to freelancers. They are working on Fiverr. I don't need any computers for them. I don't need a workplace for them. They are working from home. They are not my employee. I just pay them from my petty cash. My OPEX is higher than my CAPEX now. Imagine. Because there is no CAPEX for next 3 years for any organization. They are not going to buy anything new. They are not going to invest in new business. There won't be any new machine. Sir.
Uberizing training.
Exactly. So maybe I will sit on my motorbike or bicycle, and I will come to you, and I will give you training for 1 hour, and then I will go to another training center. Schools, electronic schools. So this is all my input, Syed Farhan. I'm sorry for taking a bit long. No.
I think we very well contributed. I think, Ghulam Mustafa, you well said. The turnaround of training, skilling and new skilling and reskilling has to be in a faster pace now, definitely. Second thing, Pakistan being one of the fifth largest population, we do understand that from permanent employment to freelancing to contractual employment would come. But then there is a big need for all those fresh grads, the younger professionals, to skill themselves and upskill themselves. So they still require some kind of direct or indirect platforms to keep themselves abreast with the market. Otherwise, surviving in these tough conditions, which is not gonna be for months. I think global, this is the first time a global pandemic after 100 years has happened. The economic factors would impact multiple years. So I think skill level has to be smarter every day and be adopted every day. So I think you are very well said. Let's listen to Anas and perspective uh, before we further move.
Thank you, Farhan. So I'll try to keep it short because I'm cognizant of time. I think I just want to sort of throw a few curveballs out there because I think we're focused on one specific area. There are other areas as well. For example, we talked about Fiverr and freelancing. Pakistan is one of the fastest growing freelancing market in the world. And that also means that those people who traditionally would have been working for an organization whom you would go and train, but there's entrepreneurs, they're working on themselves. So I'm not sure if there's anybody out there who's focusing specifically on, let's say, freelancers, because they also need selling techniques, they need skills to be able to adjust themselves within the wider sort of world. They're restricted to their own domain, right? So sometimes their social skills are not up to the mark. Generally, the freelancers that I've met, that's one area. The other is the study I was reading, the US labor study, and they said that the engagement rate right now of people in the US, the people who are not engaged, is 87%. That is a severely high rate of disengaged employees, and we need to figure out ways on how we can engage them. Another thing is that in the same study, it says by the time people turn 40, this new generation, they would have changed 10 to 14 jobs. That means they spend less than 2 years in one job. And their learning will be very different from people who spend their entire careers in one job. So I think that's what I mean when I say that the world is changing. Are the way we structure not only trainings but the way we look at trainings. For example, the way we help the organization understand value. For example, it's not just about developing people, it's about retention also, it's about employee engagement also. So now what the package that we create and the kind of services that we provide to these organizations have to include multiple skills and multiple areas that you will tap, rather than just one area where you go in, do something and come out. It's about a broader picture on how we are helping the organization achieve their long-term objectives, which include reducing the turnover, which include retaining the employees, which includes upskilling them, and therefore at the end of the day you get more profitability. So I think we have to intrinsically sort of introspect in terms of what else we can do, because the opportunities I do see out there, I may not have all the answers. This is just me thinking, brainstorming with you guys. I'm sure you guys have much better ideas than I have, but I think that's what we need to do, and we need to come up with those ideas on how we can quickly adapt and bring in something new.
Thank you, Anas. Before I move to Mashkoor sir, as you well said, one of the industry is the freelancing. And if we Google around, another big industry, which is the digital learning content development, would be one of the fastest growing industry in the coming years. And at this point in time, just our neighboring country earn a lot of millions of dollars on digital learning content. And within our training fraternity, within the social sciences, which has been taught in our country, it would be an emerging field for a lot of young graduates to understand how to develop the content for learning, and we can see the future of those jobs as well. Ji Mashkoor Saab, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing. Sorry, Mashkoor Saab.
Sure.
It just generated a thought based on what you said is about another area that is taking off right now is education, right? Now, if I think about it, these teachers are also traditional teachers, right? And now they've been asked to develop online content and engage students who are younger than the average population that trainers have to look at, right? So this could be also an opportunity because we have experts here in this panel who are experts in developing content for online audiences. And we have one area, the education system, where this is lacking, this skill. So a collaboration there could be very, very interesting.
Yes, Mashkoor Saab, your thoughts, sir?
Right. So as you said, I mean, the training and learning of people must be linked with organization goals. Yes, I believe that because once you are working for any organization or a company, you're learning your expertise, your skills. They must be aligned with the organization goals, because what I believe ultimately, eventually, it comes back to the employee, or it comes to you. You know, whether it is benefits, reward, or any appreciation, because once it is linked with the organization objectives and management expectations, of course, as a result, company achieve its goals and its objectives and its profitability. Even profitability, not only in terms of money, profitability can be any goodwill or any your repute or whatever, the business of your company, right? So it comes to the employer, it comes to you ultimately. So it has to be aligned, it has to be linked with the organization goals and objectives. Yes, again, if it is well aligned with the organization goals and objectives, you will have more engaged people in your company, right? I would like to touch a little bit here, employee engagement. That topic is actually very close to my heart, and as I earlier said, I've been working research on it, and I did my research during my studies abroad. Actually, the engagement is like it's an emotional association with the company of any person working in your company or any organization. It's emotional commitment. It's an emotional association with the company, right? So if he has been given the right platform or the right opportunity to learn, to perform, or to give his whatever he can contribute or deliver, he will be engaged. And engagement is not only giving more money or giving more reward in terms of money. No, if someone is given like a good work, and he is being engaged in some challenged work, you can have engaged people around you or in your company. I would like to share one example, classic example of employee engagement, and we will understand the concept through this. Once John Kennedy visited NASA facility in 1961 around, and he was walking through the corridors, and he saw a janitor, a sweeper, mopping on the floor. He was shining the floor, and Kennedy stopped and asked him, "Hey man, what do you do here?" And the answer he gave, that was really a classic example of an engaged person. He said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Right? So actually, he understood the purpose. He understood his purpose, being in the company or, working for the NASA. So, I can bet on it. I mean, if you see, NASA floors are shinier than, any other place. So that because of, the people they have, who understood the purpose of, your their actually their objective and the organization existence. So those companies who have engaged employees who actually been given the opportunity to learn, to perform, to contribute, they always grow, they always outperform in the competition. So I think I have just a little bit touched the engagement part again. So
I think Mashkoor Saab, you're very well said. I think with this, I'll like to link when it is tough times. The first budget which goes off is the training budget, right?
Yeah.
How do you see in this situation? What would they do about the training budget? Similarly, it is being also observed that are there companies differentiating between the budgets? So this is for digital learning and this is for the physical or other learning. And the third thing with the learning budgets is they are not calculating that with conventional learning budgets, there used to be a substantial other budget for their daily allowance, their local, international travels and all that. How do you see, because as Mashkoor Saab said, at least I would feel that with these challenging times, budgetings for training should rather than be increased, because the change which is required to keep your organization floating and progressing is far more than previous years. So I think if you control any other expense, but do not control or limit this, because that is the future of progress and prosperity. Because if employees are trained, they would give you the things, and those things would help you grow, right? How do you, the panelists comment on the challenges related to budgets and digital budgets? Sure, Mr. Kamran.
Very quickly, I mean, the question is great. I wish I could have answered it, but unfortunately, I have a commitment onwards, so I must apologize to my fellow panelists. So I hope you understand. I just have to go, but I hope this recording would be available, Ghulam Mustafa.
Yes, sir. Just let me add only one thing. Franza, we can have another session. I think the topic which you are touching is really very sensitive and very important, and for that, a person like Kamran Saab can add a real value.
Yeah.
And we have already crossed the time limit. Sabine asked me, why you have 90 minutes for this panel discussion? Normally panel discussions are 40 or 50 minutes. I said, when you will join the panel discussion, you will see. Because we want to give opportunity to every panelist to share their ideas. We don't want to just give them a question, a pre-planned question, and this was a real discussion. It was not a pre-planned discussion. It is the actual feelings, actual outcomes, and actual realities we are discussing. So I think we should let's call it off, and because everybody must have their other commitments as well, because we planned for like 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it's over now. So I must say thanks to everyone, especially Farhan Saab for excellent moderation, and to Ustad Ji, Guru Ji. All these gurus are there. Kamran Saab, Ahmed from Ahmed Bey from Dubai, from Turkey, sorry, and then Mashkoor, my old colleague of Coca-Cola, and Anas Saab joining us from Karachi, all the way from Karachi, despite of this current rain situation in Karachi. And
Kamran is look like sitting on the roof. It's a
I won't tell you where I am. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody?
Right, Ahmed, I'm going to watch Article now.
Sure, you can. Irtugal Ghazi, you can.
Article Ghazi, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Mashkoor Saab. Let's stay connected.
Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you very much. See you again.